mother in high school, so there was no
How I Met
life.
Your Mother?
There was no life there.
That's chapter 3 or 4 or 5.
Last time we finished off with graduating high school, basically.
We
We
did?
did?
Oh,
We
okay.
did. Do you have more to say?
I don't remember saying anything about high school or graduating high school.
I remember some things about high school, but there's other things about high school. What do you want to know? You want to know about the Jewish?
I want a lot about the Jewish. I want to know about social expectations at that time.
Well, I was not in the in crowd. Are we filming?
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't worry about it. Just pretend the camera's not even here.
I was not in the in crowd, but Joan was. Joan was a cheerleader. She will say a majorette with the batons. And quite good. She will say she was not in the in crowd either. We sort of knew we weren't in the in crowd, and then we ran in our own crowd.
Would she say you were in the in crowd?
No, I was. I had other interests. The in crowd. If you say the in crowd was, very social, and they would party in weekends and go places and do things, and I always knew they were the ones. I assumed, I perceived, that they had more money or more disposable income, that sort of thing. My interests, as I said, revolved around things like USY, and I would read and sew and get involved. I worked from 14, I always worked after school part-time. And 2 days a week I went to Hebrew high school, and there were always other things that didn't have me hanging around with the crowd in school. I was involved in the plays, but I was part of the lighting and sound committee, if you will. We ran lighting and sound, which was very interesting to me. I had absolutely zero desire to be on the stage, but this was very interesting, so I did that. So a lot of things that I did. I was friends, I was active, involved, and whatever, but we never occasionally maybe I would go to a party, but if it wasn't a USY affair, it was few and far between. Might be a friend had a party for some reason.
Were you dating in high school?
Yeah. Close your ears. I dated a guy from USY, but he was actually he was a counselor. He was a couple years older. He was in college down in Washington. And then eventually the USY management came around and said, you can't do that. So then we broke up. Yeah, but I guess I dated him a couple years. Went to one of the proms with him. I later heard that I think he got cancer or something, got sick and died very, very young. Very young. But after I graduated from high school, I didn't really keep up with anybody, unless they went to Maryland also, and I would see them around campus. I didn't really keep up with hardly anybody from high school. Then there was a high school reunion a couple years ago. So that was 72. This is 22, so that's 50-year reunion. And I recognized some names, but I didn't recognize a single person from the photos. Not
Is
one.
that the one that you dragged me to?
No. We went to the 10th. It was awful.
Oh, okay.
It was awful. Or the 20th, something. It was like in the back of a bar. Something like the entertainment was shooting pool. It was just like awful. And again, nobody I knew. I maybe knew one person there. So, the people that I knew went on and did other things, but they didn't revolve around high school parties. So that probably was the in crowd put that thing together. There's a website I finally dropped out of because I didn't know anybody.
My main activities were, we had a very active Explorer post. And the other activity was USY. But I got pissed off at the guy that was the president for a couple of years. And I just walked out of a meeting. I couldn't stand it anymore. But I had a steady girlfriend throughout most of high school.
Really?
Yeah. She was an aspiring opera singer.
Oh.
And she was very talented, very, very, she had a lovely voice, beautiful singing voice. Let's see. Oh, so anyway, you had your in crowd. My friends from scouting, we made our own in crowd. as far as that goes. We would, after school, we would go down to the Boy Scout office. My friend's mother worked there. And we would either hang around there, or we would do things to help out. We were very active. Basically, you know what Order of the Arrow is? It's an honor society in scouting. And we would go down, and our chapter of the Order of the Arrow, the rumor was that we had more money in our bank account than the Boy Scout Council as a whole had in their account. So, but we had big influence for a number of years at that. But you know, and working at Boy Scout camp, that was like the ultimate job. Didn't pay much. We $100 to $110 for the season for 9 weeks. And then Scott works at a Boy Scout camp from the Pittsburgh Council. What did you get? $2,000?
Yeah, but there was a little bit. $100 went further in those days.
Yeah, it did.
I worked at the shul. I worked after school. I don't know how many days a week I did. In the shul office, making myself generally useful, sending out mailings when we had an addressograph, which is that blue, a thermal print. You had this big drum and you would run things through on it and come out in blue.
Our addressograph had metal plates with the name and address on it. And it came in a drawer like this. We would feed it in, and if I remember right, there was a pedal. You push the pedal down, and the next card would slide in.
Yeah.
And you lift the pedal up, and it would leave an imprint on the envelope.
Right, exactly. But if you're the mimeograph machine,
Oh, mimeograph. Okay.
if you're making multiple copies of something, was this blue ink.
So
But
no,
yeah,
we
used the same.
did. It was an addressograph. I remember that was what it was called.
Then we had to sort by zip code, because when you took the mailings to the post office, if it was sorted and tied off by individual zip code, you got a mass mailing rate
Yeah.
rather than just a first class postage rate. So I had to do all of that. So that part was fine. I remember we, for some reason, the reserve seats got wiped out. Either we moved into a new sanctuary and we had to redo the seats or whatever. And so the whole congregation, sent in a note what seats they wanted. And in the event of a conflict, they had me, this 14-year-old girl, call them up and say, there's a conflict, you have to change it. Now I know it's because nobody wanted to deal with the, the trauma of somebody yelling at them over the telephone, and how they're going to yell at a 14-year-old girl, which plenty did. I guess I got through it. I mean, I did that. And thereby goes my deep-seated hatred of making phone calls. But USY had huge dances. The different synagogues took turns hosting them over the year. Huge, like 100 or more than 100 high schoolers would show up. The bands were very good. I remember a Motown band came in, fabulous dance bands. And that was most of our social life. I mean, that guy I dated, it had to have been in 11th and 12th grade. It would not have been, 9th, 10th grade.
So in our USY, we had a very active chapter. Most of the Jews in Chicago area lived so on the south side and straight north. But our shul and our neighborhood was straight west of Chicago. So we got kind of neglected a lot of times. But I do remember some weekend we went to a Camp Shai. It's a Jewish camp in Wisconsin.
We went there, my high school.
You were there in high school? Okay. It was Camp
Did you
Shai.
see Daddy's name carved into the wood?
Walk, was that? Did you go there?
I don't remember.
Camp Shai. And they had a couple of Lubavitch guys come in to run a Shabbos weekend for us. And I remember they put up a mechitza, although at the time I didn't know that's what it was called, with a curtain that was only 6 feet high. So I could look over at the girls section and check them out. So, and my mother hated the Lubavitch because she was a Litvak, and she didn't like the Lubavitch at all. But my sister somehow got on their mailing list, And it was like for years it would go when she was still getting mail from the local Lubavitch chapter. So I can't think of what else.
So you both went to college. Was that expected of from your families? Was everybody in the community going to college?
Yeah, it was expected that we would go to college. It was like a rite of passage. You had your ticket punched for that. Now, if I had to do it now, I don't know that I would go to college. I think the whole environment has changed, and I don't know that it's worth it for a degree in the social sciences. You were in hard science, so that's different. But I mean, a degree in psychology that doesn't prepare me for anything.
So when I was in high school, every high school had a vocational arts program in it. The high school I went to happened to have auto mechanics. A different high school would have beauty school. Another high school would have some other thing. And long after I was out of high school, in some administration or whatever, somebody came through and got rid of all of those, which I always thought was a really big, and expectation was that they would all go to college. But a lot of kids are not college material. Never mind whether you want to or you see value or whatever, but a lot of kids are not college material. And this gave them a profession. When they graduated from high school, they could go be an auto mechanic, or they could get their license to be a beautician, or whatever.
Yeah, that knife that's in that frame. Stephen made that in shop class,
Right.
and it's a lovely piece of work.
So that's shop class that everybody went to. You had to
No,
choose.
no, that was separate curriculum.
That was not. Oh, okay. Anyway.
In grade school and junior high, we had home economics and woodworking, but that was part of the
Right.
junior high school. It was a separate program. So I was making things like little tie clips for my father, but Stephen was making maybe like a two-tiered coffee table. I think Gail has it.
We have a lot of wood stuff around the house that Uncle Steve made.
Yeah.
Uncle Steve made. But I was definitely college bound, as were all of my siblings, as were everybody I knew. I remember maybe one girl that moved to Israel. Whether she stayed there, I lost track when she moved to Israel. That was like dramatic that somebody would do that. The idea of going to seminary or yeshiva after high school, a post-high school year, that was not in our lexicon at all. But we were all expected to be college bound. Now remember, both my mother and my father went to college. So it was all expected. And my father's counsel to his 4 girls and 1 son was, I don't really care what you do as long as you can make a living at it and you don't have to depend on your spouse. So that's pretty much college. I would have gone to college. I liked education. I liked learning things. I liked what I was able to do with my degrees. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
Was that an unusual belief that from Grandpa, that he didn't care what you did, compared to expected to follow a more traditional female track of like home economics and becoming a wife?
I didn't know anybody. So there was a joke. There's probably still the same joke going around that says you go to college to get your MRS degree.
Yeah. That's the elementary education majors. They were all were women, and that was the degree that they were after. They could teach for a couple of years, and then they had their MRS degree.
Right. So I was not in that track, but then I was in the science track. So everybody I knew in my classes was also in the science track. There were a lot of pre-med, although I was not pre-med, and it divided pretty quick because they would have classes for the pre-med students and classes not even, though it might be
In
the
high
same
school?
chemistry. College.
Okay.
Same chemistry. In high school, I took the science classes. I took the science track. So I did take, freshman, I don't know, there was chemistry, there was physics, there was inorganic, there was organic, whatever it needed to be. When I went to high school was considered 10th through 12th grade. Junior high was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Now they don't do it that way because they figure the development of the child doesn't lend itself to those artificial. But anyway, so for me, high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So it was probably 2 years of chemistry and 1 of physics.
Was it mostly men or even split?
In high school?
Yeah.
I was so not tuned into that issue at all. I remember I did take typing and shorthand. which enabled me to get great jobs in summer, which enabled me to pay for my college tuition and room and board out of what I made in the summer, none of which can be done anymore. But the typing and the shorthand was very useful. And there were like a few guys in a room full of girls, and they actually were the smart ones who were willing to go to that class and learn to type properly. But
I took typing
yes.
as a senior in high school when they were just converting over from manual to electric typewriters.
Yeah.
So the classes split up. Where half had the electric and the other half had the manual.
Yeah.
And then halfway through the semester, we had to switch.
Yeah.
And it made it very difficult. But then when I said for the final exam, there was major construction on the high school building, and dust was coming out of the air conditioning vent. So I started sneezing, and everybody else was having a hard time. So I just stopped, turned in my paper, and I walked away from it. And so I didn't get an A. But until my hands started shaking, I was able to type very, very fast.
It's hard to type on a manual. The travel of the key
Yeah.
is a lot,
And
so it's really
the
physically
pressure
difficult.
was harder. Yeah.
Oh, so I remember what I did when I was in high school. Maybe just in my senior year, I took a college class. I went over to the junior college at the time, and I took biology. What else do you take? Took biology 1 and biology 2. So I was able to leave the school in the middle of the day, and I would take the car and I would go to the campus, and I would come back by way of there was a linear park that was on the way, and I would pull in there and eat lunch in front of at the park. It was just fabulous. So that's what I did. So I must have been, college track and science track and everything, even from the early years. And my parents recognized it and set that up for me. I wouldn't know what to do. What was the question?
What about you, Dad?
How about me? What?
Was your whole family college bound?
No. Well, Stephen had an ROTC scholarship, and Gail went into nursing, and I went into a liberal arts degree.
Did Gail get a bachelor's in
Yeah, she has she's a licensed nurse. I don't know what the designation is.
Well, she went to college.
Yeah.
So, yeah, even though his parents didn't go to college,
I think,
it was all about the next generation
Yeah.
should go to college, at least in the Jewish circles.
yeah, it was expected that we would go to college.
Education was your ticket,
Yeah.
okay? Education could still be your ticket, except that the universities have sort of stopped teaching
So in
education.
graduate school at Pitt, we're sitting around and somebody is talking, referring to the one black guy that was in our class, Carl something or other. She said, "Oh, isn't it amazing? Carl is the first person in his family to go to graduate school." And I said, "Well, I'm the first person in my family to go to graduate school."
Right.
"Well, what about your wife?" I said, "Well, that's my wife's family.
Right.
But in my family, I'm the first one to go to graduate school." So people have a very, very short
Yeah.
visual field of vision.
So I never got involved with, competition between men and women. Even in my career, I never got involved with that.
No, because you
There
got
was-
by on talent.
Well, whether there was pay discrimination or not, very, very, like the first year that I was with a particular company, they came through and changed my salary to make it equitable. Why they did that, whether they were doing it in response to a legal thing or they'd gone through and done an audit or whatever it was, I have no idea. But after that, I think I always got, as far as I know, I always got the same salary as others. I was considered as for others.
I don't
There was
remember you
nothing
even
that-
ever talking to HR about pay parity or anything like that. But like I said, you were able to always get by on talent.
Well, so when you say how many men or women, I think I always expected that in the sciences there would be more men, but I was in biology, which is going to attract more women, relatively speaking.
I know it does now. Did it still back then?
Don't know why exactly. I mean, it would be an interesting study to figure out, why. Now, there are all these problems about trying to draw more women into the STEM, but I can tell you, the one time I can really tell you, I remember a math class in junior high school, the woman teacher, and she took the classroom and had all the women like on the left side of the class and all the men on the right side of the class, and she definitely taught to the boys. And she would go over, we had the window side and they had the supplemental blackboard side, and she would be, doing math on the supplemental blackboard. It's the only time I can really see blatantly that, I felt like, how come they get it and I didn't get it? But I was an R, so I was really right on the line anyway. So for me, even there, it like wasn't such a, wasn't as big a deal as it could have been.
Did you ever have a professor that would write like this and then erase like that?
No, only you. Only you. I did have a professor, he was writing so small, I said, I can't see. He said, sit in the front row. So I sat in the front row. I still couldn't see, but I didn't have any more arguments to give him. What else do we do in high school? Was there religious discrimination? Not that I was aware of from the teachers or whatever. Like I said, school was closed. The county program closed school on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I was always told that it was because they couldn't field enough substitute teachers on those days. But the area, the junior high area for sure was considered pretty Jewish, but the high school that drew from a bigger area was not as Jewish at all.
So in high school, my best friend was named Scott, who you're named after, Scott Nixon. And every morning before classes start, I would meet him at his locker and we would talk and usually bitch and moan about stuff. So one morning he comes up to his locker and he slams it shut and he said, Al, let's go picket the River Forest Tennis Club. And I said, oh, okay, why? He said, well, they won't let you in because you're a Jew and they won't let me in because I'm a Slav. His girlfriend had just broken up with him. But we never did the picketing.
What was the transition from high school to college like as a Jew? And then also in general?
For me, there wasn't really much of a transition. I mean, most of the Jewish kids that I knew were either from USY, or if I didn't know them, they were from usually a chapter one on the south side of Chicago.
That went to Northern Illinois?
They went to the NIU, yeah.
How about interacting with the larger population in the college? Did you get more anti-Semitism? Did you get more
There was
weird
some,
questions?
but not anything really that noticeable at that time. It was not, I wouldn't call it blatant at all. It just never came up on the radar.
I don't think it ever came up on the radar too. I went to Maryland, which is considered a very Jewish school, like up to 20% of the population was Jewish, which was probably more than even my high school in terms of percentage. I ate at Hillel. I stayed close to Hillel, so there were not all Jews in my dorm, but a lot of Jews in my dorm. I don't remember figuring out who was Jewish or not Jewish in my classes. I wasn't aware that they were overwhelmingly Jewish. All the Jews in science were in pre-med, not my classes, they were in pre-med. Did I even date in high school, in college? I can't even remember if I had a steady boyfriend or even went on very many dates. It was periodically somebody would ask me on a date, or periodically, I might go to, I remember I went to one and only one frat party because somebody in the dorm asked me to go with them, so I went. But it was, you study hard enough, you don't really have a lot of time to, particularly sciences, it took up a lot of hours. I wasn't that interested. I was never really interested in casual dating. You meet a guy and he invites you to go somewhere. It's like, it was never my interest during, probably not high school, not college.
So at least you didn't make the same mistake I made.
No, I didn't. I didn't. So, and we were pretty, I guess I would have to say I led a pretty secular life. So I would go I stayed in the dorms. I wasn't living far away. I was not more than 8 or 10 miles from my family house, but I could be in the dorms, so I was. And I would say Friday night, I would go to Hillel for meals, for sure. Whether I went to services, I don't have any recollection of whether I did or I didn't. But the rest of the time, Saturday or whatever, normally studying. I might go to I don't think I went to football, maybe once in a while I'd go to a football game on campus, basketball game on campus, not that often. That was sort of like a different orbit. And it was a huge university. Maryland had like 25,000 full-time undergraduates, and then you add the graduates and you add the faculty and the staff or whatever, it's, 30, 40,000 people on the campus. But you very quickly only interact with the people in your major, and the people in your major you see over and over and over again. And after the freshman classes, which tend to be big classes in big lecture halls, my science classes were, 30 people or less, small classes. And you see the same people over and over again. I didn't become particularly friendly with any of them. I didn't particularly remember that any of them were Jewish, which might be why I didn't become friendly with them. You don't have that underlying knowledge of kinsmanship.
So we
Just
had
kinda went
a Hillel, very inactive, and on the high holidays they would rent one of the rooms on campus for services, and there was a visiting rabbi who I imagine his level of knowledge was not really high, and there was a chazan who sang so much like an operetta that you couldn't follow him. You couldn't sing along with him because it was so
Right.
over the top. So I hated that. And so there couldn't have been more than 50 people in that. Not even that many. Maybe 25 or so. But I don't remember meeting anybody in particular that stands out in my mind.
Hillel for us in those days was one of the homes off the south side of the campus. You have to cross Route 1 and it's back in that rabbit warren. There was a home. And it was crowded. Down in the basement was the kitchen, and that's where you ate, and it was always crowded. Then they built a bigger building, and now I think there's a bigger building, right? So it's growing, it has grown. Now it's a tremendous operation there. But I would go and I would eat. I had a little refrigerator in my dorm.
In my dorm, they were outlawed.
They were probably outlawed in my dorm too, but we still had a refrigerator.
What was outlawed was that, and popcorn poppers, and halogen lamps.
Yeah, halogen lamps.
Because they took a
Big
lot
fire
of
hazard.
Yeah.
Well, a big fire
It was
hazard.
there was a lot of it soaked up a lot of energy.
You could create mood if you took your halogen lamp and you draped a red cloth over it. Right?
And then they were,
What a great
but it was
idea
a
for-
real fire hazard
Right.
to do that.
Yeah.
We had intramural sports with the dormitories. There were four co-ed dorms, a private off-campus dorm that was mostly Jewish kids, and there were one or two girls' dormitories. But that was years ago. I have no idea what it would be like now.
Yeah.
So anyway, Hillel had a building, a separate house off campus, but I can't remember any activities there. I have no recollection of anything going on there at the Hillel.
I don't know. I don't have a recollection of activities because I was on the north part of the campus, and then I had to walk all the way through the campus and cross a major highway in order to get to the Hillel. So I would go for meals, but I wasn't interested in going back again if they had some evening activity or anything like that. It was a long walk.
And I never
Especially if the weather was
participated
good.
in any sports. If I wanted to exercise, I would get on my bicycle. And it's Northern Illinois has got a lot of, all the highways are straight, east-west or north-south, because it's all flat. And I would just get on my bike and I would ride for hours. And I would discover these little towns that would be like a crossroad, and it was like a general store here and a farm supply over here, and a couple of houses that farmers would be up there, up on the hillside. But I was doing so much bike riding that my thighs got so big I couldn't wear blue jeans. It wouldn't fit.
When I was in college, I needed to take a physical education requirement. I don't know if they still have that. They still have that at Maryland? So we did. So I chose swimming at 8 o'clock in the morning, and where I had to go swimming was very close to my dorm. But in the winter time, even though it was the swimming pool was indoors, it would get foggy because the water was heated, but the air was not as heated, so it would get foggy. And there were sometimes they called class because it was so foggy, the teacher couldn't see anybody in the water. It was dangerous.
Where was the swimming class?
In a pool, probably. Yeah.
It had to have been, I don't think it was the field house, so I think it was actually back towards where the Hillel was when you were in school, kind of back in that direction. Whether they still have a pool. Do they still have a pool?
Not there.
Well, okay, so I don't know where it is now.
There's the business centers there that was pretty new when I was there. So that could have been it.
So the business center, when I was there, was one of the main buildings along the center area there. About halfway down was the business school. And I know that because it was right next door to the biology group.
So the business school has all the money, got a fancy new building. The biology school is still there.
Yeah.
So I remember PE was a required course, I think required by the state education department.
Yeah, maybe.
So in high school, it was required, and the coaches would run us like close order drill. We had jack inspection. We had to wear a certain type of T-shirt with our initials sewn on the shorts, and it was really anyway to stand at attention and lift up the shorts to make sure the coach could see that you were wearing a jock strap.
Great.
And it was, and the pool, the rumor was the water had like a green tinge to it until somebody figured out that yellow and blue makes green. So they figured they were putting some kind of a blue agent in the water to make it green instead of yellow.
Mm-hmm. You can spare me the details.
Yeah. But it was a big field house. We had a huge basketball court. There were 2 swimming pools for the men and for the women. Archery was a women's sport, not for men. So I couldn't do any more shooting after high school. But we had an archery range in our basement.
Mm-hmm.
I showed you that when we were there. You saw that, didn't you? Yeah.
Yep.
I took driver's ed in high school. I
Oh,
don't think
yeah,
they do that
yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, they do.
You did, but I'm not
Did
sure.
you have?
We had an oval on the school property, and a couple of cars that had dual brakes at least for the instructor. But I don't think that's there anymore. They've renovated that school a couple times since I've been gone.
Did
but I
you
don't know
have
if that's there.
driving simulators?
No, we had the real thing.
Well, we
We
had
had
the real
vehicles.
thing. We had the real thing too, but we started out with we sat in a little cubicle
No.
with a dashboard, and a seat was like a driver's seat, which would be good for Eva to work on something like that. And it was hooked up to a computer where the instructor could see, like for example, I was dozing off or something, and I didn't I ran a red light because I didn't pay attention to it. So the instructor knew that I ran a red light,
Mm-hmm.
and I could get dinged for that. But then we had driving out on the street when we would otherwise have phys ed, and I was such a good driver that the instructor would have me drive while we ran some of his personal errands.
I think driver's ed was part of the physical education
Yeah,
curriculum.
yeah.
I remember one classmate didn't do it, didn't want to do it. Everybody thought that was like so weird. She didn't want to get her license.
Yeah,
But by and large, everybody.
it's really weird
For it.
that a teenage kid, boy or girl, didn't want to get their driver's
Now I
license.
know many teenagers choose not to get their license. But in
understand
those days, you know.
Yeah,
Gas is expensive, cars are expensive, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do when you do get there.
Well, very few people, maybe nobody, had their own car, they maybe drove the family car. We drove the family car. We had 2 cars. We drove the family car. And then one of my uncles died, and we took the car, and then it got passed down. You know, Mark drove it for a while. I don't know if Sue ever drove it. Mark drove it. Joan drove it. I drove it during college years. You know, it's this beat up car.
We had a car like that too. It was an old late 50s DeSoto that Stephen wanted it after he got out of college. Until I think his foot went through the floorboard. It was so rusted out.
They do get rusted. My father
It
used
had
to
big
say,
fins on the back. It was really, it was really 50s. It was really retro.
yeah, for sure. My father used to say that every nameplate he purchased went out of business. So he had a Henry J. He had a Buick Skylark. He had a,
David Nash
I think he had a Nash,
or a Hudson, maybe a Hudson.
a Hudson, yeah. He had a Plymouth.
What was day-to-day life in college? Pre-internet.
So you went to the library, and then you studied in the
You
library.
took out
pulled
your
out books
laptop
from
on the library.
What's a laptop? I had a lap, and there was a top of my lap. Absolutely. The
I found a room in our library that played classical music.
oh wow,
They had a huge record collection, and the guy would play music. So I would go there and study.
the library was actually next door to my dorm. The what they called the graduate library, the big library, and I would go to there to study a lot, I guess.
Oh, we also had a radio station, a public PBS station. That the format was mostly classical music. So somebody mentioned to me, we're talking, they said that I had such a great voice for radio.
Mm-hmm.
Not like now, it's kind of, I got older, my voice is shot. So I went for an audition, and I didn't get hired.
It's too bad.
Yeah, would have been cool.
When I was in college, I worked at the theater, the Fine Arts Theater. I got that job through Joan, who worked there, and then when she was we overlapped by a semester, and then she graduated, and I came in. But so I inherited her dorm room, which was a really good room because on the top floor, it's 3 floors, but on the top floor, the roof was a little bit cantilevered in. And so where the square footage downstairs were triples, in that room, because it cantilevered in a little bit, it was only a double. So I had a big room with 1 roommate rather than 2 roommates, and everybody in the dorm said, "How'd you get that room?" Well, because we went to the dorm office together and we said, "We're siblings, and she's leaving and I'm coming in, and all the stuff's going to stay." And she said, "Oh, okay." And so after all the whole 4 years that I was there, I was in this wonderful 3.5 years, whatever, I was in this wonderful room. But I also inherited her job with the Fine Arts Theater in the office. So I did office related work. In fact, there was a while there where I was the only one in the office. And I took, for an elective, I took a drama class, but it was backstage stuff. It wasn't performing. I wasn't interested in performing, but I was very involved in that for all the years that I was there. I think I had this part-time job. I got to know everybody and hung around before performances or after performances, that sort of thing. But when you, at the beginning of each semester, you took a 3x5 file card and you wrote down the days and you wrote down the hours and you filled out what classes you were taking when. And I had a classmate that was an English major. So 15 credits is 5 classes times 3 credits each. And she had, 5 bars across three days. So a 3-credit class met 3 hours a week, or it met twice a week at an hour and a quarter, whatever the minutes added up to. So she would have this filled out. And I would have those things too, but the lab classes were always twice as many hours. So I had like twice as many hours filled out. So my whole dance card, so to speak, my whole card of classes during the day was full. If I had a half hour free or an hour and a half free or whatever, that basically all day, every day, I was free. I never had like Fridays with no classes or anything like that. And a lot of times the classes were 8 o'clock in the morning because they could to fit in the labs. The labs were all 2 hours. They had to run these kids through. So a lot of times I would go it would be a broken up day, which is a hard thing to do, from 8 to 5:30 or something like that. But the was a very large campus, so you really couldn't effectively take classes back to back unless you knew they were going to be in the same building, because it would take you longer than 10 minutes to get all the way across campus. So you had to be careful what you scheduled where and to allow time to get there. And the teachers had no, sensitivity. Oh, I'm late because I was hung up on the other side of campus. Next time, walk faster. That's kind of the response that you got. So that's what I did all day long. I studied or had this part-time job when I had time to go.
We had, I volunteered for a crisis hotline, where if somebody was troubled, they could call this hotline, and there was somebody on the other end of the phone. Had some training that could maybe help this person. So it was I was working late one night, one shift. Phone rings, I pick it up, and this woman was coughing and crying and sobbing, and she said she had just taken a bunch of pills. And I said, so what did you take and how much and how many? She says, I took a bunch of whatever it was, and I don't know how many it was. And then I said, tell me where you are and I'll send somebody to help you. And she hung up. So that was amazing. But there were a few people that I helped on that. It was President Johnson had gotten extra funding for community mental health centers. So we were told about some people were chronic callers, and there were specific instructions on how to deal with these people because they were regular callers. And this one caller was a woman who was convinced that she didn't want to go to sleep because she would miss the second coming. Well, I have no background or knowledge about this. And her instructions were, let her end the call, don't hang up on her. Let her end the call. So she knew this. And after our 15-minute limit, she would start over again. She would just back up and start the whole mental process over again. So I couldn't hang up on the woman until finally, after like an hour and a half of these 15-minute increments, where I said, why aren't you going to sleep? She says, I don't want to be asleep when Jesus comes. And I said, well, I don't know a whole lot about that, but won't there be a lot of like trumpets and banging and cymbals? And she says, yeah. I said, well, won't that wake you up? I'm trying to put some logic into her frame of logic. And she said, well, she didn't want to take that chance, but then I had to force it. I said, I think it's time we said goodnight. So, but there were some weirdos. So,
Troubled people.
yeah.
So my parents lived, like I said, 10 miles down the road, so I go home pretty often. Not once a week, maybe. Do laundry.
What was college like for you, Dad? Probably easier than it was for Mom.
Well, I don't know what it probably
You
was.
didn't have lab classes.
We didn't have lab classes. Well, psychology had labs. You can edit this out, but I went to college with a bunch of assholes.
Don't say that.
They were assholes.
Edit that out.
You can edit that out.
Unfiltered.
It was. No, I didn't have a real good time when I was in college. So. No.
Unless you get really involved in something, I think college is a lot of drudgery, and you can get lost. A student can get lost, and nobody's going to come rescue you. You get involved in an activity, and then you sort of get engaged with the activity. Then you always have something to go or something.
Yeah, after I had to go and take an extra late semester. There was an intersession, which was like it was a 2 or 4 weeks, where every day was a whole week's worth of classes. But I came down with mono on the day of the midterm, so I had to drop out. And because of that, I had to stay. I needed an extra semester to get enough credits to graduate. So the graduation for my class was in June, but I didn't have enough credits until February. And I never went back to DeKalb to go to graduation at all. So,
So you talk about before computers, when we went to register for classes, now remember, there's 20,000 people, 20,000 students, undergraduates. You figured out on the catalog what classes you wanted to take, or what sections you wanted to take, or what you needed to, fulfill requirements or whatever, and then you went to the Coliseum. And there were tables set up, and in the time you were supposed to go, like, okay, ours go, Tuesday at 3, and so you went at Tuesday at 3, and you literally walked around this Coliseum finding the desks that had the classes that you wanted to take and get yourself registered for this class here and that class there and get your name on a list or whatever. It was all done manually like that.
so in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, was at the very beginning of computer networking. So they would, the phone company was locally owned, and they would run a wire, and remember it's all agriculture, it's all farmers out here. They would run a wire to the farmer's, end of the farmer's property, and then they would clip the phone line to barbed wire, to a barbed wire fence, and have this barbed wire fence run this way to the driveway, and then do something to connect it. And every time the wind would blow, the wire would move, so the phone line got static. So if you were waiting for some computer output, it would get garbled because of the static. But then the phone company was eventually bought out by a national company that would spend more money on infrastructure.
Sure.
But it was really weird. And I had a computer project that I had to go to the computer center, and we had the Hollerith cards.
Yeah.
So I had the technician was behind the wall and behind a window, and whenever he felt like it, he would take the Hollerith cards from the bin. You came in and you had to put your card deck over here, and it might be, he said, it'll be, the output will be ready within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So there's no hurry up and get this done because I'm on a deadline. Sometimes I would go back and look an hour later and it was there, or it would be the next day. And that was a real pain in the neck. And I remember getting my output once, but I had the reversed, the inputs. There was an X and a Y axis, but I had them reversed. And I didn't have time to put it through to get it corrected, to get it redone. So I had to turn it in that way with an explanation. It was a real pain in the neck.
Well, there were a fair number of times that you came back with a sinking feeling because there was a single piece of paper because the deck didn't run because you had a typo somewhere in the cards.
Yeah,
or something
absolutely.
Like
If there was a typo, you had to redo that card and then put it through another time. And they had line printers.
yeah.
That were
And you had to read each one to see
ka-chink.
Yeah.
And then you had to go on the line, the output, and figure out, did I spell this word right, or was there a comma there that's not supposed to be there?
I did my master's degree using Hollerith cards.
Yeah.
What kind of programs were you running?
Fortran.
What were they doing?
I'm sure it was statistical work. Yeah, I learned Fortran. Do you know Fortran?
I've dabbled. A long time
You
ago.
take the dust
in college.
off
You make a lot of money as a Fortran programmer now.
Joan learned COBOL, probably was the business.
Make a lot of money as a COBOL programmer now.
Yeah, you tell.
That's what they taught us when
I never
when
learned COBOL.
when we first met. I took an introductory graduate course in computers because it was billed as computers for people with no background who don't know anything, and go to class first day, and the teacher looked around and he said, "There's 5 more people in this class than there's supposed to be." He says, "In a couple of weeks we'll get it down to where it
There's
should
a lot of
be."
attrition. I took a beginning
Yeah, 'cause-
programming
yeah,
class.
but that
There's
goes
a
to
lot of
church too.
attrition.
Yeah.
A lot of attrition in the math classes. They expect that. weed them out. The
Oh, and I
pre-med,
could-
so I took math with the pre-med, and they really wanted to weed out the pre-med students.
Yeah, and
Very
I
difficult.
I took an economics class, but I dropped it after the second class meeting because the teacher was basically cursing. He was talking about women like Anne Margaret with big boobs because he liked them. He liked the big boobs.
Can you like not talk about that stuff on camera?
I'm just telling you what the teacher was
Okay.
doing.
It's
Find
an
something else
honest
to talk
picture of the times.
Yeah.
No, it was an honest picture of your father in the Times.
No, it's an
Not
honest
true.
picture
No,
of his teacher.
This is a huge class with hundreds of students in it.
Well, the problem with the teachers is, particularly my science classes, is they were largely taught by foreign graduate students. You couldn't understand what they said. It was, some of those classes you persevered in spite of the teachers, not with the teachers.
You remember?
Biology didn't tend to be like that, but the physics and the chemistry and math, all of that tended to be these foreign graduate students.
Remember when I had appendicitis?
Mhm.
I was within a week or two of finishing up a project with other people, a couple other students, and here I am in the hospital. So I had to basically do their work to make sure that I got done, because otherwise I couldn't participate in the classwork at all. So we finished the class, and the class they had arranged to go on a riverboat cruise on
Yeah.
the 3 rivers. So you drove to the dock and walked me up onto the boat, and I sat down, and the boat went on its cruise and did its thing. And a couple of days later, I had to meet with one of the graduate students to stamp that I had taken the last class. And he says, well, I don't know that you really were sick because I heard that you went on the boat ride. And I said, yes, I did go on the boat ride. My wife drove me to the dock. She walked me up onto the deck and sat down. And when the boat ride was over, we walked back to the car and drove home. Because he had some other health issues, and he was comparing to see if I was as sick as he was. So I told him I didn't want to participate in war stories, but he stamped my paper anyway. So
What was your favorite class in college?
I don't think I had one.
I didn't have
Probably
one.
finance. It was, yeah, that would be the most fun I had was finance.
I mean, I
Because
majored.
the teacher was a wonderful guy. But then Joel Posen was in my class, and he was talking about his worst class in graduate school was finance. So
I mean, I majored in biology, and I found biology interesting, but it's a lot more interesting when you don't have to study for the exam and memorize all the details and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of pressure in college on all the classes. I didn't have a favorite class, and I didn't take any electives. There were required electives that you had to take, so I took them, but I didn't take anything just for fun. No way. I don't remember anything that I took that it was fun. Swimming wasn't bad, except it was 8 o'clock in the morning
In the winter.
in the winter. And come home with wet hair.
Yeah, break it off for your haircut.
Sorry.
Okay, anything else you want to share about college?
I think college was a way station. I knew I would have to get a graduate degree as a biologist. A biologist with a bachelor's degree works in a laboratory somewhere. But I knew I wanted more than that. I knew I was going to get a graduate degree, so it was just a way station to another college, another graduate degree.
Okay.